Hey, what's up guys? How's it going? It's Dakota Fishman here, and today we're going to be talking about rally trapping, and I'm going to give you 5 tips in regards to rally trapping. So to begin, we're going to talk about composition. So first tip with composition is obviously you want to have the right composition. Now, I've seen a lot of people vary from time to time as to what they want to do with the troop comp. I can tell you that I've rallied trapped at like 700,000 or so, tier 4, with about roughly 2 to 3 million tier 2. Now, I'm not saying that I would recommend that because really, it doesn't work really all that well. You tend to lose more than you do anything else because you really got to get reinforcements. If you're going to anyway, you want them all in one troop type and you want them in your front line because, well, that's going to do a lot of damage and that's really, really helpful. So ultimately, if you're trying to build a rally trap, in my opinion, right, I feel like most people ought to be able to do like 3, maybe even 4 million tier 2, and then more towards the million or so tier 4 range. Range, like even per type would be great, because really that gives you a lot more flexibility. But even in 1 or 2 types is really not that bad. Having that said, though, the one thing that you have to be very wary about is just that the lower your troop comp is, the weaker it is, and therefore the easier it is for someone to rally it out. Having that said, if you ask me, I think some of the best rally traps out there right now are anywhere between 250 million might to like 300-ish, 350-ish, and that ballpark, even some up into the 400s. But those are like some of the best rally traps that are out there because they keep their might super, super low. But if you can't maintain a might that's really low, then ultimately I think 1.5 million tier 4 and 2 million tier 2 is just fine. But I love the rally traps out there right now that are pushing like 3 million tier 4 across because they completely annihilate rallies that come at them because they don't even stand a chance when they're in war gear. They eat their rallies, like so many rallies at a time, because they've got like 5 million tier 2 and then they've got 3 million tier 4. Like, it's a ridiculous amount. But at that point, it's not really a rally trap. So, having that said, tip number 2 is obviously going to be in regards to strategy. So, one thing that you can do to kind of, beef up your game, I guess, is there are a couple of things that I've used in the past to kind of hopefully build up a way to trap. So, one thing you can do is you can actually put a rally up on a nest and then put your leader and 1 troop in that nest for an 8-hour rally. Now, the only thing you'll have to worry about really is just the timer on this, but assuming that, somebody comes by and scouts you, they'll see that and they won't see a leader. So it's one way to kind of get people tripped up over whether or not you have any troops or not. It's a really nice way to be able to take advantage of getting people countered that way. Because again, most people aren't going to pay attention to this. So tip number 3 is basically what I recommend doing is, and although I've never really tried this yet, I know for a fact that this is probably going to be really, really good. Now, why I say that is because a lot of people out there have probably seen a Griffin Trap used on banks with a ton of resources. A rally trap could use this as well, because really all you need to do, right, is you get this ability, Homeward Bind, and you get it maxed out and you get 6 seconds. So in theory, really, what you would do is you're going to take all of your tier 4 and you're going to throw them out on tiles. Now, why you do this is because in the army leadership tree, max gathering, if you complete the extra gatherers research, it actually gives you another 50,000 per march, which means that if you have a 50% boost, that's like 425,000 troops that you can throw away on a tile, which means that if you can have up to 6 armies, then you're doing 425,000 troops per tile 6 times in a row. That's quite a lot of troops. And now think if you had 8 armies. That's an enormous number of troops you can stash away on tiles and then do it at a long distance. And now somebody scouts you and they see very little amounts of tier 4. It's an easy way to bait certain kinds of rallies. So like maybe you want to rally and have somebody send all cavalry. What would you do? Well, the logical thing to do then is probably to either A, lower all your infantry down, or B, lower all of your infantry cav in range, because ultimately then it just baits the rally. People immediately go, well, this guy is easy to rally, and they will rally. And this is a really easy way to do it, because then ultimately the Griffin Trap method gives you that upper edge in hiding your troop composition without people really being able to determine what you have, which is always, always, always what you go for in an anti-scout. But if you don't have an anti-scout, it's even better. Now, tip number 4 is obviously I would say if there was anything at all when it comes to like rally trapping that people seem to get really confused on, it's like, well, okay, if I'm gonna go and rally trap, what kind of talents should I use? And I think everybody is really divided on this because some people are like, hey, I'm gonna increase all of my attack stats, and other people are like, you know what, I'm gonna increase all of my HP. I, for one, like to increase all of my HP. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think having all attack is better than having HP, or vice versa? In my opinion, okay, although you're getting a 10 or so 15% bonus, right, from this particular chunk, right, it's 7%. You also have to ignore the fact that if you don't get this, it's 87%, which is a huge difference in terms of bonus stats. So in my opinion, all right, 87% HP makes a heck of a lot more sense than 7% attack stats. But hey, I'll let you be the judge. Having that said though, all right, when it comes to gear and stuff like that, the one thing that people do tend to question a lot is, okay, well, is my gear any good? Well, I would say if you're not pushing 350 to 400%, yeah, you probably need some better gear. All right, because ultimately you want to have the highest attack stats that you can, right? But something that I think a lot of people ought to be pushing for, and this really goes into just about any kind of trap for that matter, but you really ought to be getting your Prism boost and your Altar boost if you can, because that's a large chunk of stats that you're not getting, which is going to really slow down your ability to actually be able to build a significant amount of damage if somebody does rally you. Now, this gets into tip number 5, which is the question of, okay, so should I have any beds? To answer this question, I think this is more of, do you expect to eat marches between, a mil plus, from a mythic player, for example? If that's what you're doing, you might want to consider just having all manors. Because the benefit of having all manors is that you really don't worry about the tier 2 reds as much, because, frankly, you're going to lose troops, and you know that you're going to lose troops. And so rather than kind of, bite the bullet, as they say, you kind of avoid that whole problem of, oh, I need to rebuild troops, because if you've got all your manors set up, the cost of rebuilding the buildings is not as near as bad as rebuilding those troops. Now, I would say, arguably, between the two, it almost always, in the case of rally trapping, you're going to find that you're going to lose a lot of troops a lot of the time. And so I would say, if you want to have like 2 or 3 infirmaries and then go all manors, there's probably nothing wrong with that. But having that said, obviously there is a cost, and there is kind of an associated cost to everything that you do. Like, if you're going to go and build all manors, then do take into consideration the fact that although you do get an increased army attack bonus, you do open yourself to losing a lot of troops. And although an infirm bonus and all the HP you get out of it is great, it is one thing to be said that, in my opinion, although I love having a lot of manors, it is incredibly expensive to have to rebuild the infirmaries every single time. So do take that with caution, because it is about 2,000 gems a pop a building, and it's like 30 to 40 million resources across per building. It's not cheap. Now, having that said, the last and final tip I would have for rally traps is that, although it's not openly talked about, I've also found that if you're able to, right, something that is really helpful, all right, is actually to get yourself Helltrader. And honestly, you wouldn't think, right, but one of the things that I really like about Helltrader is he actually gives you your 15,000 or so tier 4 units, which, although it doesn't sound like much, 15,000 tier 4 over a period of time is really helpful for rally traps, because once you get past this breaking point, you can just continue to add the amount of tier 4 you need randomly every now and then, and it's a really great way to build up without actually having to do a lot, which I think ultimately any rally trap should use and probably have. But when it comes to actually, making use of this advice as a rally trap, I think one thing that, although I don't see a lot of people doing it, I think rally traps can benefit from actually doing a method that some solo traps are out there doing, which is to say that, they take their leader, right, on an alternate account, and then they kick the leader out. Honestly, it's not such a bad idea because it gives people the idea that, oh, maybe the guy's zeroed or something. And if you use the Griffin Trap method that I was talking about earlier, you kick the leader out, they see you don't have any tier 4. The logical, idea that starts to go through their minds is he has no tier 4, he has a ton of tier 2, and he lost his leader. I wonder. And it doesn't take a lot for someone to then, logically jump to conclusions. And I think that's my last and final tip for you guys. So hopefully you find these tips helpful for rally trapping, and needless to say, I'll see you guys next time.